be DAWS, which is Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services. Now it's HHSC. I'm a little bit congested, so I apologize if I sound like I'm talking through my nose. But anyway, I've been a part of the group for about 4 years and been teaching on accessibility for about four years since I've been there. We teach on all type of accessibility topics from Word, Excel, PowerPoint, email, you name it, we teach it. Now, there's two sides of accessibility. There's documents and there's forms, right? So there's Word document, Excel document, PDF document, HTML documents. But you also have HTML forms, PDF forms, Word forms, and the like. So what we're going to be covering today, and actually when I was told to present this, it was going to be on PDF. But I'm actually going to be doing both Word and PDF together. So you guys are going to get a 2-for-1 today. And we got a good crowd today, so I hope you guys can learn a few things. I'm known for my chauvinism. Those who know me, I have some chauvinism. I'll throw a few of those out as I present. But basically, they're just sayings that I have when I teach. I do teach at night also. I teach web, multimedia, mobile application development at a local training company. And also teach at the state as well. Anyway, what we're going to be talking about is both Microsoft, notice up on the screen there, and I have a brief presentation that I want to talk about before we look into some examples. We're going to be talking about both Microsoft and, conjunction there, and Adobe, because they go hand in hand. If you're going to create a PDF form, you typically start off with what we call a source document, right, before you convert it to a PDF document, and that's typically the case. And so what we're going to do is show you that if you do it right in Word, you can save yourself a lot of headaches in PDF. And I also installed the latest and greatest, I may add, version of JAWS on my computer this morning. Hopefully after the break we can turn it on because I only have like 40 minutes to look at. How many of you used JAWS before? Okay, quite a few of you guys. So you don't have to know JAWS, but you do need to know what JAWS looks for, right? JAWS is an expensive program, so like $1,000 or so, and it's one of those programs that takes a while to learn. But if you know what JAWS looks for, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, usually when I teach, I'm going to tell you the why behind things. If you know the why, you can go a lot further to figure out the how-tos, if you will. And we'll see that in some examples that we cover. But basically, we're going to be covering both Microsoft and Adobe, or Word in this case, and PDF. Documents, not forms, that's another beast in itself, but we're going to talk about documents. Now this basically applies to any version of Word, Excel, PowerPoint as well. A statement by the President Council on Disability says that technology for most people make things easy or easier. For people with disability, however, technology makes things possible, and that's a true statement. I have something similar to that I often say when I teach, and that is that when you make things easier for people with disability, you make it easier for people without. And that's a true statement as well. And so we're going to be talking about that as we go forward. So what is accessibility? Because sometimes people think if you take a Word document and you convert it to PDF, it's accessible. No, that's not the case. Okay? Just because you take a Word document and convert it to a PDF doesn't mean it's fullest. It might be more accessible, but doesn't mean it necessarily is accessible because you made a conversion from one format to the other, or what we call a source format to the target format. But what is accessibility? Well, accessibility is basically a blended word, access and ability, or the ability to access information. Basically means that people with disability can access the same or similar information and perform the same or similar functions as anyone else. And you do that with technology, what we call AT, Assistive Technology. To aid people with disability to have the same information, or have access to the same information. So what are some of those assistive technology? Well, you guys are probably familiar with these. The screen reader. Now we're going to be hopefully demonstrating JAWS. In fact, the acronym for JAWS, for those geeks in the house, is Job Access with Speech. Okay, that's what JAWS stands for. But there's also Windows Eyes. That's the Microsoft version of their screen reader. There's VoiceOver if you have an iPad, and there's a open source version of a screen reader called NVDA. So any one of those you could use to basically allow a blind user, a lazy person like myself, sometimes you get lazy, just turn JAWS on and have it read to you. So that's good for you too. But it allows you to read the screen back to an end user. And then there's a screen magnifier. This is for someone with a low vision that basically has to magnify the screen in order for them to see it correctly. And then there's Braille display as well as reverse contrast. So you can use the Alt, Shift, and print screen to help. The way to remember that is think of ASAP. We think of it as soon as possible, right? Well, think of Alt, Shift, and print screen, and to help you remember those series of keyboard shortcuts to toggle that reverse contrast function on and off. So it's Alt, Shift, and print screen. And then that speech recognition program, the one that we like to use is Dragon Naturally Speaking, allows you to give command and dictation into a software like Word and tell it to do something and to write information, text to speech, if you will, in various types of programs. Now, there's alternative formats to, besides Word, there's HTML. In fact, HTML is the most accessible format out there, bar none. But PDF is the second in line, if you will. PDF can be very accessible. It takes a little bit more effort sometimes to be accessible. Now, Word is accessible if you're using simple text and images, right? Keyword there, simple text and images. If you go beyond that, you go complex tables and other things, you may want to convert it to a PDF format or an HTML format. But typically, you start off with Word. Word is a good source format for many applications like PDF, HTML, and the like. Now, there's different ways you can use a Word file to format your document to make it accessible. Now, the thing I teach in my class is all about the structure, okay? It's all about the structure, excuse me, all about the structure of the document. How pretty you make the document is your business, not the style, but the structure, okay? How ugly you make the document, that's your business, right? But it's the structure of the document that dictates whether it's accessible. And so what we're going to be talking about are these structural elements, there's about 5 of them, that will make your document accessible. Now, you may have them, but they may not be structured in your document correctly. We're going to talk about what you need to do to make that document accessible. Even though you might have it, it may not be structured correctly. And that's important because having these structured document, because JAWS will take these structural element rather, and provide a list of those structural elements. We'll talk about that and how JAWS literally takes your headings, for example, and use it in a list, and somebody can navigate through that list to a particular topic of interest, what we call content on demand. Now, Word does have an accessibility checker built into it. Let me say that again. Word does have an accessibility checker built into it, but do not rely on it. And we'll show you in a minute why you don't rely on the accessibility checker, at least particularly the older one, and why you want to do your own check when doing accessibility. I'm not going to go through this, all of this presentation. This is something I usually present in a 3-hour class. And I have a lot of material to cover, and as often you've heard me say, I'm going to try to squeeze a 2-pounder bologna in a 1-pound bag. So I have a lot of material to cover, so I'm talking twice as fast to get the material out. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about is, and again, I'm going to bounce back and forth between Word and PDF, and I might even turn on JAWS, maybe the second half, to show you what exactly is going on behind the scene. One of my Chopinism is go behind the scene to see what it means, or look behind the curtain and see what it's certain. And so it's always important to know what's going on behind the scene. If you understand that, you can figure out how to do things when it comes to accessibility. So first thing we're going to talk about, in fact, let me just give you a bird's eye view of what topics we're going to be talking about. First of all, we're going to talk about headings. If you don't get anything right in a document, get the headings right, right? Headings are so important to a document. I'm going to talk about some things about headings in a bit. But if you get the heading right, you can go a long, long way of making it accessible and usable. Now, there's a difference, by the way, between accessibility and usability. Accessibility is the access of use, whereas usability is the ease of use. You can go to a website, it might be, black text against a gray background, it's usable, right? I mean, it's accessible, but it may not be very usable, right? So there's a difference between the two. Oftentimes, we try to use those terms interchangeable, and there's a subtle but distinct difference between the two. So we're going to talk about headings and how important they are to making a document accessible. And that applies to any type of document, whether it be Word, PDF, HTML, to name a few. And then we'll talk about lists. What do you do with a list, and how to make a list accessible, and what do you do not want to do to break a list. A lot of times people, they have a list, and it's kind of hard not to do a list right in a Word document, but people have a tendency to break the list. And we'll talk about what you don't want to do. Images, and this is a dead giveaway. Most of you, I'm sure, know what do you do with an image? You put what? Alt text. And I'm speaking to the choir here, right? But you may not know what not to do when it comes to including description for those alt texts. So we're going to comment on what not to do as far as the alt text. And then we'll talk about tables, okay, simple tables actually. There's also, if time permits, we might even do a little complicated, complex table, we call it, in Adobe Acrobat. And then we'll talk about color and contrast, right? Very important topic to cover. And that's not a structural element, but that's something that you want to do to your document also to make it accessible. And so we're going to start off with a Word. We're going to convert it to PDF, and then we're going to actually do it two ways. We're going to do it in Word, save it to PDF, and it's going to be inaccessible, right? And then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to start off with Word. I'm going to fix it in Word. I'm going to what we call mitigate it. And I have, by the way, a Chopinism. You guys would appreciate this. Folks in the Civil Rights Office love this Chopinism. Comprehensive mitigation prevents excessive remediation that avoid arbitration and costly litigation. Okay, and as one of my students rightly stated, that prevents frustration and discrimination. That's the Dr. Seuss version of accessibility. Okay, but that's the true statement, though. When you comprehensive mitigation, you prevent problems from happening. You're doing less remediation on the back end. So if I fix it right in Word, there's less I have to do in a PDF document to make it accessible. So I'm going to do it both ways. So again, you guys getting a double presentation here today. So with that in mind, let's talk first of all about the number one thing that you can do to a document is to make the headings accessible. So I'm going to start off with a Word document. I have a Word document that I use in my class that I teach. And you can see it's just a regular Word document, nothing fancy about it. But I want to ask you guys a question. Does that document have headings? Does it have headings? Okay. Anybody else? Is that how to make heading accessible in Microsoft Word? Is that a heading? You know, the H1 tag, heading 1 tag in your Word document? Is that huh? Click on it. Okay, there we go. We're going to click on it. Now let me go to my home screen so you can see the heading levels. Not click on it. It is a what type of style? Normal. So it's not a heading. Okay? It is style like a heading, right? And remember I told you style doesn't mean anything to accessibility. Your document be as ugly, as pretty as you want it to be. It's not about styling the document. It's about the structure, okay, of the document. So this is not a heading. It looks like a heading because typically headings are big, black, and in bold, right? And so we give the illusion, like a magician, that it's a heading. But indeed, this is a paragraph that has been styled to look like a heading, okay? And I have a little, this actually is not a Chopinism, but just because a cat has this kitten in an old oven in your backyard doesn't make them biscuits, okay? That hit some of you guys tomorrow, okay? Just because a cat has her kittens rather, in an old oven in your backyard doesn't make them biscuit. Well, just because something looks like a heading doesn't necessarily mean indeed that it is, okay? So that's not a heading. Well, let's look at Word and accessibility checker and see what it does for us. So I'm going to go up to the File panel and check on the check for issues, and I'm going to select the check accessibility. And it's going to open up a panel to my right, and it says what? Unable to run the accessibility checker. Okay. Uh, Anybody can guess why that's the case? The version level, right? Uh, the accessibility checker is for 2010 and above, but a lot of us, like Andrew there, we work for the state, right? And we get old documents all the time, right? And you typically will get a 2003 document, right? So what we need to do is convert this document to a 2010 or above. Actually, I'm using 2013. So I'm going to do a simple file save. And then I'm going to select the latest version, which is and I'm going to name this 2010 just not to confuse you. 2010. Now when I hit save, okay, now let me try that again. I did not open up. Okay, there we go. Okay, let me try again. Okay, I guess in 2013 it doesn't really actually do it. In 2010 it works. Anyway, we'll overlook that. But what we've seen is that this particular document does not have headings. I don't know why it's not working in 2013. That's true. Because I'm usually using 10 at work. But let's look at the structure of that document again. And I'm going to go back to the previous version. Why is it not opening? Okay, there we go. All right. So we look like we have, in this document, we have basically the pseudo, and my computer's locked up. Technical difficulties. Okay, hopefully that'll work. All right, so we look like we got what appears to be headings, right? But they're not. So what we want to do is change those to actually. Before we do that, though, I want to bring it into PDF and show you what happens, and then I'm going to fix the problem. So I have a plugin called Acrobat, and you guys probably have done this before, right? And I'm going to do a convert to PDF, right, or create PDF. It's going to prompt me to save that file with the same name, but with a .pdf extension. So I'm going to go in here and save this as, and I'm going to just take that off, just not confuse you. Now I'm saving it as a PDF file, and I'm going to hit save. It's going to convert that to a PDF, and you guys are going to see that in a sec. Oh, and this is my first time seeing that one. I installed JAWS 18 this morning, so I think that's what all of this is. Right. Okay, so we have this PDF file. Now, and this is the DC version. We're using DC currently, which is a little bit different from the previous versions. But let me open this up. There it is. Okay, so let's look at the tag tree. Now, the tag tree is typically used to dictate the reading order of a document, right? One of the most common way is to make sure that the tag tree reflects the reading order of what you want JAWS to read the document. Now, if I look at this document and I look at the tag tree and I click on it, and I'm going to use the down arrow to go down the page, and it's going to highlight the corresponding element on the page as I navigate down. So when I hit a heading tag, it says what in the tag tree? What kind of tag is it in the tag tree? It's a paragraph tag, right? And why is that? Even though it looked like a heading. We didn't style it as a heading in our Word document, so it didn't come in as a heading, right? So this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, that comprehensive mitigation, if I prevented a problem from happening, would avoid excessive remediation. Now, when you got a 1 or 2 page document, it's not a big deal, right? But when you got a 300-page document, you don't want to be able to change in every paragraph that is a pseudo meaning false or full heading, right? You don't want to have to change every instance of a heading paragraph to a heading. So, well, how do you do that? Well, let's do it 2 different ways. That's the hard way and the easy way. One way to convert this thing to a heading is to use you guys are probably familiar with the accessibility tab, I'm sure, and the reading order, right? And the golden rule in most applications, as you may know, is only what's selected gets affected by what you do next, right? So we got to select something in order to be affected by what we do next. And so what I want to do is use my cursor to select what I want to affect, which is that heading or pseudo heading in this case, right? Now that I have it selected, I can convert it to an H1 tag, right? Just like that. And I can come down to the second one, and let's assume that I want to make this an H2. So I'm going to select this one and make it a what? Heading 2, right? And likewise, we can select this one and
Adobe have a function key like a repeat, so you don't have to keep clicking those buttons?
no, you got to click on that little button every time. Okay, and by the way, which is a little Chopinism of mine, is now if I got a lot of these headings I got to convert, that becomes a pain, right? And so my Chopinism is 1 by 1, not much fun, okay? And that's a true statement, okay? And so, but if we had fixed it right in the Word, we wouldn't have to be constantly having to be doing all of this in the PDF file. And so I literally have to go through this whole document, select the text, change it, select the text, change it, select the text, change it, and that can get old really fast, and it's irritating to say the least, right? So I would have to go down here and look for some more, and then come. Oh man, what happened to my document? Got corrupt. That's weird. It blew away the rest of my document. That's really weird. Anyway, we got that first page to demonstrate this. I'm having all kind of problems today. Only when you present, though, right? And when it happens, doesn't work. Doesn't happen when you're not doing this. So, question.
Yes. When you were in that window, you were selecting on like heading 1, heading 2, etc. I noticed each time you selected a different number, heading 1, heading 2. Is that because it was a 3rd one, 4th one, 5th one, or is it that's the level of heading?
Okay, so let's talk about that. With headings, and again, I usually, prerequisite for my class is you have to be able to count to 3. It used to be 5, but I got it down to 3. And the bottom line is, with headings, 1, you have to have real headings. That's number 1. First thing you need to remember, you have to have real headings. You can't have pseudo headings, that paragraph that looks like a heading, right? 2, you want to make sure those headings are nested correctly. Okay, so typically start off with a heading 1, and then you have a heading 2, heading 3, right? But they have to be nested correctly. So I started off with 1 because that's the top level heading, and then I did a 2. Well, it depends upon the structure of your document that would dictate which heading you want.
So in this document, because you labeled it heading 2, heading 3, those are sub.
Yeah, those are subheadings.
2 is under 1, 3 is
Exactly.
under paragraph.
or they're nested inside of each other.
nested.
Right.
They're not sequential.
They're not sequential.
all
They
the same.
they
So
literally
it's a different style. It's still a heading,
right.
but a different style.
It's a different level of a heading, right? And so you start off with a head.
Correspond to HTML.
It corresponds exact for those who may be familiar with HTML. You have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, all the way up to heading 6, right? Now, I typically recommend that you only use heading 1, 2, and 3 unless you have compelling reason to do 4, 5, and 6, right? Because when you get to 4, 5, and 6, it begins to look like a paragraph instead of a heading. So unless you have a compelling, and again, I know you work for, some of you guys work for the state, you know, y'all have all of these nested stuff going on. You have to do it, but if you can avoid going past 3 levels, particularly in HTML, unless there's a compelling reason to do so, rather. But headings 1, you need to have headings. That's number 1. Again, this is a takeaway or take what you want to take home with you. 1, you have to have real headings, not pseudo headings. That's number 1. 2, you need to have them nested correctly. Key point there. Okay.
I was just thinking, sometimes you need to be able to remember that, especially if you're making it in Word and make accessible. There's 2 separate things in terms of headings. There's the functionality that you're describing, but the actual visual style you could change within your document to be whatever you want it to look like, but it's still going to have that same functionality. Heading 1 is going to have the same heading 1 functionality, whether it's 18 pointed blue,
Right.
36 pointed red.
Right. And I might have a teeny weeny heading, right? It's a heading nonetheless.
It's hard to make that
And
distinction.
and that's the point I've established up front. It's not about the style, but about the structure. Okay, I can have a small heading, highly not recommended, right? But I could have a little small heading that looks like a sentence paragraph, right? But it's a heading nonetheless. Now, so with headings, though, let me give you a classic example that I usually give. Let's say you have, I don't know how many of you read the newspaper. Most of us online these days, right? But let's say you're reading the Austin American Statesman, right? Heading 1 would be Austin American Statesman. Heading 2 would be news, sports, and weather, right? And under sports, you might have football, baseball, and basketball. That would be a heading what? 3. So you have different levels that dictates the levels in your document, right? Now, why are headings so important? Because headings add division to a document. It adds order to a document. It adds clarity to a document. When you read a newspaper or a book or magazine or an article, you typically glance at the headings, right, and go to a topic of interest. When I'm reading on Austin American Statesman or some article or book or whatever, let me go back to the newspaper. I'm not looking for the obituary section unless I just had somebody just passed away, right? I'm not going to the obituary. I'm going to look at a topic of interest, and then I'm going to start reading it. Well, what JAWS does is it collects those headings, if you will, and give you what we call a list of headings. That's why they're so important, right? A blind user basically can navigate down that list of heading to a topic of interest to them. When they click on it, it automatically takes them to that heading, and then they can automatically read the content below it, right? And that's why it's so important to have headings, because it provides an easy way to navigate your document, not only for a blind person, but also for a sighted user. Again, going back to what I said earlier, when you make things accessible to people with disability, you make it easier to people without.
And for people who are, I know there's a lot of people that, well, none of my users are impaired in any way. Lots of people forget search engines are blind and deaf. So it helps SEO as well.
Exactly. Another reason why you want to have headings, because they're collected by the search engines. If you want to get up in the rankings on your website for search engine optimization or SEO, for those who know about that, it would help in that respect as well. So that's one way to create headings in a PDF document. Is you got to select what you want to affect and then hit the heading 1, heading 2, and likewise. Now, I was doing that for a long time on my job. You know, I was literally going in and changing, open up this panel, selecting what I want to affect, and then doing that. Well, I found an even easier way of doing that. I'm going to actually change it back to a paragraph tag to illustrate this, and then I'm going to show you an easier approach. So I'm going to select this, but this time I'm going to change it to a P tag, And notice that's changed back to a P tag in the tag tree. By the way, I didn't show you guys. When you change it, it's going to change in the tag tree to the corresponding heading that you selected in your touch-up reading order panel. Well, let me show you another way of creating a heading, if you will, which I think is easier because you never have to open up that panel, okay? And I was doing this for about 2 years, and then I discovered from one of my coworkers that it was an easier approach to do that. So if you're navigating down a page, use my down arrow to navigate, and then it's going to highlight the corresponding tag in the document, as you see, right? Well, if I'm on a heading and that's a P tag, I need to make that, let's say, an H2 tag, right? You guys tracking? Well, I could use my touch-up reading order, but that would require a lot of steps. That would require me to, first of all, figure out where the stupid panel is and open it up, right? I have one of those moments, right? And then I got to hit, and then I got to select it, and then I got to hit H2 or heading 2 button in order to convert it. Well, an even easier approach to that is, and you guys would love this, is basically just click here, and with my cap lock on, just type it in. Life is easy. Okay, and so you don't need that touch-up panel. If you know the heading that you want to type in, I just type in H1. Okay, so you can literally select the tag.
We can't really read the tags panel, just so you know.
Huh?
We can't really
Oh.
read what the tags panel is. I know, it always looks worse up on the screen.
Yeah, it is. Wow.
Can you repeat, so, that's again, you hit.
Okay, so what I did was, okay, so basically you just double click on a tag in the tag tree, right? Double click until you get to the selection, and literally just type whatever tag you want into that tag tree. And I'm just telling you, for a 300-page document, I can rock and roll, technical term there, through a document and convert those headings rather fast if I'm using my tag tree, then have to go select, click, select, click, select, click. That's a pain, if you will. Yeah. Okay.
Like in Word, you know, you can select the group of text,
Mm-hmm.
change all at once. Can you do that?
No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And that's the reason why you want to do it in Word first, though. Okay, that comprehensive mitigation, prevent that excessive remediation that I preach about quite often. Okay, no, you do it in Word. In fact, that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to go into Word and do it in Word this time and do it right in Word. Then when we convert it to a PDF, let's see that indeed it comes in without remediation. Okay, so I'm going to get out of Acrobat here, close it out. By the way, another reason why I'm thinking about it for headings, so let's talk about why headings are so important. It's one, they add structure, they add clarity, right, to your document. They provide easier way to navigate your document, not only for a sighted user, but also for a blind user. Well, let me go back to the Word document. Let's talk about some other benefits of using the headings. Again, we'll spend quite a bit of time on headings because if you could get just the headings right, how many of you with a little effort think you can select a word and then hit heading 1? How many of you with a little effort you think you can do that? It's not that difficult to do, right? Okay, a blind user would really appreciate you. Okay? And I would appreciate you too if you send in a document to me, because then I won't have to redo them, right? So it benefits everybody, what we call equal access. Okay, so I'm back in my Word document again. I got this pseudo or faux heading, right? These faux headings in my document. And the accessibility panel doesn't really do a good job of finding out whether or not you have headings in your document or not. We saw that earlier, right? And let me just do it again. If I go over to check for issues and do check accessibility, and it's telling me unable to run the accessibility checker. You saw that. And even if I could convert it to 10, it's still giving me some issues that it doesn't even see the headings. Now, there's a better approach to see whether or not you have headings in your document.
Do you think it's doing that because that document's real?
No. It's because it's 2003. And if I had 2010, it would convert it and tell me there's no headings in a document. But I'm using 2013, and it's still presenting me with some problems. But not because it's read-only or in the compatibility mode. That's basically saying you have an old version of the document at hand, and it's just going to give you that error. But watch this. So I'm going to take this heading. First of all, let me just turn on another panel that you guys may be familiar with. Under the View tab, there's this option called Navigational pane. I'm going to click on it. It opens up a panel to my left. You guys see that? Now, this is new to me. Again, I'm using 2013. I'm usually using 2010 at work. But it tells me, at least some useful information here, creating an interactive outline of your document, right? Well, I actually don't have anything in here, so it's telling me that, it's probably a good thing to do. I don't have any. Remember back in school, and I know this goes back a long time for some of you guys, but the teacher used to tell you create an outline of your essay before you populated it. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You have your heading levels, and you had to send that to her or him, and then approve it, right, before you can finish that essay. What we call an outline. It's typically a good way to create your book before you populate it. Well, that navigational pane is akin to that. It's an outline. It's an electronic outline, though, if you will. And I will show you some advantage of it. So I have that navigational pane option checked under the View tab, but I don't have any heading, so none is showing up on that list right there, and rightly so. So what I'm going to do, again, the golden rule is select what I want to affect. So I'm going to select my first heading, or in this case, pseudo heading, right? And I'm going to convert it to use my Home tab. I'm going to convert it to an H1. And you see H1 shows up in that navigational pane, does it not? Then I'm going to scroll down and select my second pseudo heading right here. And I'm going to convert it to what? H2, or heading 2. Now, when I say H2, I mean heading 2, because I have an HTML background, but they basically work the same way. So I'm going to select heading 2, and it gets placed in that navigational pane. But notice it's indented. It's underneath, it's on the inside. It's what we call a parent-child relationship, right? Children will inherit properties of its parents unless they define their own. And so it inherits properties of its parents, and then it defines its own as well, right? Because you inherit properties of your parents, but you can define your own by painting your hair purple, right? That wasn't part of you when you came out of your parents, but you decide you want to change it, right? So same thing with styling. The subheading inherit properties of its parents unless you define otherwise. So we got a heading 2. Let's create another heading 2. I'm going to select this one and hit heading 2 again. You guys see that? I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to select this and make it heading 2. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit further. I'm going to select notes and make it a heading 2. Now, this could be heading 3 or whatever, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to keep it at 2 levels, right? You guys get the gist of what's going on, though. But see, so I got a top level heading, and then I got, 4 H2 or heading 2 headings beneath it. Subheadings, what we call it. Sub means to go under, right? So I have a nice structure in that navigational pane over there to my left. Now, what can I do with that? Well, there's several things I can do with this. One thing I love about this navigational pane, and I showed this one time to someone, and they say basically this was worth the price of admission, is that, remember back in the days when you had to create that outline and then you had to rearrange it? Back then, we grew up on typewriters. I know some of you guys are too young to remember typewriters, but we had typewriters. You remember typewriters?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so if you messed up, you had to restart all over, right? You couldn't, cut and paste like we could do today. But even today, with electronic document, if I got a heading down at the bottom here, heading in some text, and I want to move it up, what do we typically do? We cut it, right? And then we look for where we want to place it, and we paste it, right? Well, that's a tedious process. If you use this navigational pane, it automatically does that for you, okay? So, for example, if I use this additional note, which is at the bottom of the page, right? See, this is all the way at the bottom, the end of the page. If I wanted to move it up the tree, if you will, I can click on it and drag it up the tree, right? And now it is at the top of that panel. What did it do? It automatically moved the heading and its content to that level. Okay, so I didn't have to cut and paste, find out where to paste it. I just can move stuff up and down the tree readily without much fuss, and life is easy. And likewise, if I wanted to move stuff down, right? Let's say again, this is at the top of the document. If I wanted to move it back down, I can just select what I want to affect, drag and drop. Okay, that's not a dance routine. Drag and drop it, and it's down at the bottom of the panel, if you will. Now, so that's another advantage of using headings in Word, and it's going to save you some problems when you go to PDF. Let me tell you something else that can help you is that, and I have a table of content up here, right? And I'm going to delete this table of content just to show you how to recreate it, if you will. Now, back in the old days, 5 years ago, you used to have to manually create a table of content. It may have been 10 years ago. But you used to have to manually create a table of content, right? Now, you can create a content based off of what? The heading levels, right? So you can literally take your document and go to the reference panel. Make sure your cursor is where you want to insert the table of content. Is typically at the top of the document, or it's typically, like the first, second page of your document. Go to the reference panel, and when I click on this table of content button right there, I can select the style that I want. I'm going to select the first one. Bam! It creates a table of contents for me automatically. Okay? Now, the good news is that when you convert this to PDF, it becomes an anchor link to your document in a PDF file automatically. The emphasis there is automatically. Okay? Not only that, but it also creates what we call bookmarks, okay, which is similar in your PDF file. We'll see that when I convert this in a minute to PDF. It will automatically convert this not only to a table of content, which is fairly accessible, but also to a series of bookmarks that you can use, or a blind user can use, to navigate the document as well, besides using headings. Okay, so you can use headings to create a table of content, to create bookmarks, and various other things to make, and move things around readily without having to cut and paste, right? So let's convert this now back to what we should have done up front the first time, right? Had we done this the first time, when I convert this to a PDF, it should come in without any problems. Let's see if that's the case. Now, again, I do apologize. I downloaded JAWS 18, and just about an hour before I came here, in fact. And then I have 2013, which I'm normally using 2010, but we'll see if it's going to convert correctly. So I'm going to click the Create PDF File, but this time we mitigated it, I should say, in the Word. Now we're going to convert it to a PDF. And again, it's going to save with the same name, but with the .pdf extension instead of .doc, it's going to be .pdf extension. And you can change that, by the way, if you need to.
We're doing a file save as, do the same thing.
Yeah, either one.
Have you ever gone in, before it's telling you to actually create the PDF, you ever looked at the preferences? Because you can,
Yeah.
whether or not to set bookmarks.
Yeah, you could do that, and then I may be able to show them that. Oh, why is this thing not saving? Save. Let me try it again. Unable to save the file. Let's try that again.
We have to save the doc first.
I thought I did. Maybe I didn't. Read only. I get so much to save it as a new version. Okay, so let's try to save it again as a PDF file. Create PDF, and again, it's going to save it the same name, and it's creating it, converting it, and it's going to open it, right? Now, let's see what we have on our tag tree. If I open up my tag tree, You see the H1 automatically came in. Why? Because I had H1 in my Word document. H2 came in. Why? Because it was in my Word document. H2 came in again, and I'm just selected to affect it, right? Why? Because it was in my Word document. You guys get my little drift there? Now, let's look at some other things that it did for us. Nice table content, right? Now, because this is only, and I don't know why this thing messing up my document. Notice that when I click on a bookmark, I mean not a bookmark, on a table content, it's a link to the, what we call a name anchor for you HTML folks in the house, to that place in the page. But you also have, for those who may be familiar, you have bookmarks. This little bookmark icon right there, if you click on it, these are bookmarks. Now, what are those bookmarks based off of? Those headings, right? So you see the power of the headings, if you will. Now, if you open up this in JAWS, it's going to, and do insert F6, it will basically pull up a list of headings for that document, and someone can navigate through that list because they're blind. They don't need to read your whole page to get to what they need, right? It can go through a list of headings, news, sports, weather, and then click on, the weather, because I need to find out that you got the storm coming my way. I want to find out some information without having to read your whole website, right? And they can select that information and go to it. So that's headings. You guys tracking on that? Okay, so let's recap what we need to do with headings again. One, you need to have real headings, right? Not pseudo heading. You can't have a paragraph styled to look like a heading. It has to be a real heading. That's number one. Number two, they need to be nested correctly, right? So you can have an H1. Now, typically, a classical example is you might have multiple H1s, but you want to use them if it's right to use. For example, if I got a book, I might have chapter 1 as being an H1, chapter 2 as being an H1, chapter 3 as being an H1. Whereas in newspaper, I might only have one H1, right? The Austin American Statesman, right? So it depends upon the format of your document will dictate whether or not you have multiple H1s or not. Now, it's good practice, a common practice, a best practice to have at least one H1 in your document. Okay, your document should have at least some type of title, right, in it. So need to have at least one heading H1 in your document, preferably some other ones to make it easier to navigate for all of us, both sighted and blind users, or low vision users. Okay, any question on headings? Is that clear as mud? Okay.
One question. If you wanted to just put in headings that weren't necessarily for sighted people, but you wanted to have them in there, could you put them in with white text, and then if you convert it to PDF, do they stay white so that they're still?
Yeah, you can, and that's chauvinism. Fake it till you make it. Basically, you can have white on white, and that's all right. Okay. You could have your text and make it, white background, make the text white, right? Now, sometimes you have to do this. And a sighted user can't see it, but a blind user will read it because it's still a heading. Now, don't make it a paragraph. Make sure it's indeed a heading, right? It will come into that document as a heading, and the screen reader will pick it up, rightly so, as a heading. So, indeed, yes, you can. Yeah, a little stealth, if you want to call it that. Any other question? No, that was a good question. Okay, so let's look at the next structure element. Again, it's all about what? The structure. Okay, so that's one. By the way, something I forgot to mention is that JAWS will also announce the structure element. So when it gets to a heading 1, it's going to say heading 1. When it gets to a heading 2, it's going to say heading 2. When it gets to a heading 3, it's going to announce that object. I like to think of them as objects, right? And objects have properties, right? And so it will announce it as such. So let's look at another one. So I'm going to close this out and close this out. And let's look at the second thing that we can talk about is a list, okay? Now, when I say a list, I'm talking about two major types of lists, right? You guys, I'm sure you're familiar with, if you've used Word at length, you know what these two types of lists are, right? They're bullet lists, right, and a numbered list, right? Now, typically, you want to use a numbered list when the order of sequence is important, right? Like in a recipe, you have it in the right order, right? A bullet list is where the order is irrelevant, so you may just put it in any order, right? But it's good practice, or common practice, that instead of having a series of things in a paragraph that are related, right? In a series of paragraphs that are related, put those in a list. It could be a bullet list or a number list, right? Because it makes it easier for someone to read, right? Not only for the sighted person, but also for a blind person. Because what JAWS will do, again, it will announce it as a list. It will say a list of 5 items. That's useful for me to know. That's a lot easier, even as a sighted user. It's easier for me to see a list of 5 items than for me to read a big boatload, that's a technical term, of paragraphs that has the same thing in it, but it's hard to decipher. There's 5 items in that list of paragraphs. You guys understand what I'm getting at? So if things, or keyword is, are related, put it in a list, right? Life will be easy for everybody, okay? Bullet list, a number list, not depending upon what it is. So once you have a list, typically it makes it even easier because you can throw out words, right? You can put on what we call those, when you're doing your resume, what you call a word right up front. Like I executed, power words, right up front in your list. So it makes it even easier because you can throw away words and all the fillers and fluff, right? More fluff than stuff, right? In your page and make it easy for everybody. We call plain language, right? Keep it simple, students, kiss, if you will. So make it a list. Now, most of us don't have a problem creating a list. We know how to create a list. You type a 1, right? And then you start typing, and when you hit the return key, what happens? It automatically puts a 2. You type some more stuff. Oh, battery's running low. So what was I saying? I forgot what I was saying. Okay, so you type a 2, you start typing. Now, how do you break that list? You hit the return key twice and it released you from that list, right? Now, you want to do a bullet list, right? You hit the asterisk key, right? You start typing. You hit the return key, it's going to make it a bullet, right? And then it's going to create a bullet. You start typing, you hit the return key. So you guys know how to create a list. I mean, for crying out loud, right? Bullet list, a number list. The problem often is, though, is that people will break that list and becomes inaccessible, right? And the way they break it is because they add multiple carriage returns after each list item because they want to add space between it, right? Or do some other things. Let me show you an example. By the way, another way to create a list, that's the most common way to start a list, right? But what happens if you already have a series of paragraphs that you want to convert, emphasis there, to a list? So again, going back to the golden rule of most applications, is you select what you want to affect, right? So you select the items that you want, and I'm going to select these items, right, those paragraphs, and I'm going to hit what? Either a bullet list or a number list, right? I'm preaching to the choir here, right? You guys know that, right? And so it converted it to a list. And that list is accessible if I were to convert it into PDF. Now, if I didn't convert that, it's a really pain for me to have to create a list. And I'm not going to even take the time because you have to create all kind of tags inside a PDF in order to convert this to a list. So do it right in a Word document, and it's going to come in clean. Again, but the problem is people have a tendency, they might use the Shift Enter key to add space between the lists, right? What that does, though, is instead of having a single list what it creates is a series of one item lists. So instead of having one list with a series of bullets, each one of them becomes a series, is a list with one bullet in it. You guys follow me where I'm going with that? Right? So don't add multiple carriage returns, soft breaks, if you will, after the list item is going to break it. Now, what can you do then? Well, because you might get a edict or a mandate from your manager saying, I like the list to be tight, or I want it to expand, or whatever, and you want to add space before the list, between the list items. Well, there's a couple ways of doing that. You can use a list style for you word geeks in the house, you word gurus. But for us mere humans, mere mortals, if you will, there's an even easier approach to increase or decrease the amount of space that you can put in a list. If you click on this little icon, I don't know if you guys can see it up at the top. Can y'all see that right there? Notice, in fact, let me, again, make sure you select all the items in your list that you want to affect. Notice when I increase, you see it spanning, right? So if you want to increase or decrease the amount of space between a list, just use that icon right there to increase or decrease, and that doesn't break the list for you, right?
Okay. But then what if you, for some reason, want to start part of that bullet item on a new line and keep it as part of the same bullet? So you want it to be at the left margin, but I always do Shift Enter.
Yeah, you can do Shift Enter, but you have to just be careful that you don't break it. You can add some things in there, but sometimes you might be you want to be careful that you don't break it. Now, what you can have too, so just don't. You can have, you can do something like this, right? And so that's not a problem. But just be careful that, and when you have a character return or soft return, you click on this little paragraph icon right there. You guys have done that before, I'm sure, right? You see the paragraph markers behind the scene. Just make sure that it's part of the same list item when you do that. Now, what you can also have is a list in a list. This is akin to HTML list, right? Because what you do with a list in a list is you select what you want to affect, you hit the tab key, and it demotes it to that second level. Now, JAWS will read these as various nested levels, right? It says level 1, level 2, level 3, and it'll tell you when it goes in and when it comes out of a list, okay, when it does that. In fact, I tell you, let's do this. Let's see if we can do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on JAWS. Hopefully, it'll work, because, again, I just installed JAWS 18 fresh off the press here. I think it just got released a few days ago. And we'll listen to this list in JAWS and see how it reads. So what I want to do, do I want to do it in Word first? Because Word will read list. JAWS will read a list in Word different than in PDF. Okay, PDF is more accessible. Word is accessible when it comes to a bullet list, but it will read it. JAWS will just say bullet, 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 right? Whereas in a PDF, it'll say a list of 5 bullets. That's more useful for a blind user, because I know I got 5 items that's about to come up, and I'm gonna listen to the 5. When I'm saying bullet, 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 I don't know if there's 5,000 other bullets underneath there, right? Okay, and so PDF, if you can make your document a PDF, do so, because it's going to be more accessible than a Word document off the right up. 99% of the time, unless I get a client that says I just can't have a PDF, I will convert a Word document to PDF and not even think about it. Okay, I just convert it. I know it's going to be cleaner, it's going to be faster, it's going to be portable, right? Portable document format, right? And I can put it up on the internet fine and do all kind of fun stuff. I can lock it, I can secure it. I mean, the list goes on, right? And so I can do so much more to a PDF than I can a Word document. But let's listen to this in JAWS. Hopefully it'll come up. And then can we take like a 5-minute break? Okay, let me do this first, and then we'll take a break. Let's see if we can get JAWS working. JAWS 18, hope it comes up. And And do we have speakers? You don't have no speakers. I hope it's loud enough to project. I got George started up. Um, And I did an insert F6 to pull up that heading list I was telling you about earlier, right? So this is what a blind user, typically a blind user will use the tab key, that's their friend, right? Or to tab their way through the page, or control and a down arrow to navigate, the up and down arrows, or left and right arrows to navigate a document, because they can't see much, right? So those keys are their friends. Uh, and one thing they do quite often is they pull up a list of headings to see what's in the document. A good way to see what's the titles of the document and the subtitles are is to pull up the list of headings, right? Now, by the way, and let me just say this while I'm thinking about it, not only does it pull up a list of headings, right, like you see right here, and so I could literally just go through this list and find out those headings in the document, and when I hit the enter key, it will take me to that place in the document and then start reading right below it, right? So life is easy. So this is a list of headings that a blind user can get to. Now, besides the list of headings, JAWS will also create a list of all of these structure elements, by the way, let me just say, a list of lists, right? So if you got a list of bullet lists, number lists, it'll pull up that. It has a list of images, a list of buttons, because a lot of times they might be looking for a search button, right? So it's a good way to get to it, just do search for a list of buttons to find the search buttons, right? It has a list of links, because sometimes links are important, right, in a document. So all of those structural elements gets collected, if you will, into a list, just like a bullet list, if you will. Yeah, and we'll talk about that one. Basically, while I'm thinking about it, in case I don't get to it, you should avoid using click here, right? Because, again, it will collect all of the lists of all those links in your document. And if you got a lot of click here's in that dialog box that comes up, click here, click here, click here, guess what? I don't know where click here means or it's going to, right? So you want to make your link descriptive, right? Say go to Health and Human Services or go to TWC. Be descriptive in your link. Don't say click here. Never say click here. You guys should know that by now when describing a link. Okay, just let you know. No charge for that. Okay, so headings basically gets collected in this list of headings dialog box, if you will. Again, same thing for lists, for tables, for images, and you name it. And that's why those structure elements are important. That's one thing that JAWS does. The second thing it does, it announces those elements, right? So let's look at it. I'm going to close this out because, again, if I select one of these and hit the enter key, it would literally take me to that place on the page. In fact, let me just show you. If I hit the enter key, which one I'm on? I'm on list, add, structure, and meaning, right?
Heading level 2, list add, structure, and meaning to A.
Right, it went right to that spot on the page, right? Skip over everything else and jump right to that, what we call name anchored, if you will. Those who are familiar with HTML may be familiar with name anchors, right? Now, again, let me go back up to the top of the page. I'm using my control up and down arrow key to navigate. Now, by the way, just in passing, what you may want to do, too, is avoid putting multiple paragraph or blank paragraphs between your heading and your and your paragraph, because JAWS, depending upon how you have it set up, JAWS will read those paragraphs as blank paragraph. So what I like to think of, what I like to say is, if you got a paragraph, a heading, and then blank, 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 and another paragraph, you know, and you put those multiple paragraphs to kind of put a little space. You don't do that. You use margins or style to increase the amount of space between your topic or your heading and the paragraph below it. Otherwise, if you put those blank paragraphs, JAWS will say blankety, blankety, blank, which I call JAWS cursing at you. And we don't want JAWS to be cursing at you. I know some of you guys, you wouldn't take that too kind of that. Okay, so let So JAWS will basically,
This exercise is designed to show why you should use lists in your document.
so I'm going to use my control down arrow.
Heading level 2 lists add structure and meaning to a
Notice what
document.
it says, list, heading 2, right? Then it spoke that item.
Like headings, lists add structure and meaning to a page.
It's gonna
and allow
read it.
both users who are
Now I'm gonna click
sighted
again to go to
with the
benefit.
parent line. Heading level 2 benefits of using lists.
Right, so you see it's reading it as I go forward. Now let me go down to the bottom here, to this list item.
Page 2, 1. Convert this page to. Click 3. And the
And so it's going to read
PDF
1, 2,
maker
3,
dialog
right?
box.
So,
Type
but
to
what it didn't tell me in Word was how many items I have in the list. So that's okay, but again, it leaves me hanging as a blind user because I don't know, and you see I got a lot of steps in this process. It would be helpful for me to know the number of steps in advance, right? And that's what a PDF file would do for you. Okay, so let's go down to the bottom of the page here, and now I have this paragraph right here, a series of paragraphs, and I want to convert it to a list, if you will. So again, I'm going to select what I want to affect. Excuse me. And I'm going to convert it to a bullet list. You guys see that? And it would read this. In fact, what I want to do is, I'm going to make 2 of these because I want to make a distinction between the 2.
Enter.
So I'm going to copy this. Copy.
Context menu to navigate. Leaving menu. Paste it from clipboard. Page 4.
And I'm going to create one as just a regular list, and I'm going to create one as a nested list. So I'm going to copy this, select it rather, and I'm going to make it a bullet list. Could be a number list just as well. Now I'm going to do the same list, right? And I'm going to make it a list again, but this time I'm going to take maybe 2 of the elements, and I'm going to hit the tab key to indent that list.
Page 3, 2.06 inches.
So now I have a
selected.
list in a list.
Follow around bullet DBSM-2.
So now let's convert this to a PDF to see what happens in the PDF document. So I'm going to save it so it won't crash on me. And then I'm going to do Acrobat, create PDF.
Save Adobe PDF file as dialog. File name : edit combo 2 underline lists. To set the value, use the arrow keys or type the value. Two underline lists.pdf. Selected. Heading level 1. Heading level 2. List adds like headings. Lists add structure and meaning to a page and allow both.
Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see this better.
This exercise is designed heading level 2. List
Read
add
a
structure
second
and meaning to
heading
a
level,
document.
right?
Like headings. Lists add structure. Heading level 2. Benefits of using lists.
Now let me go down a little bit where that list we created earlier. By the way, in fact, that's an example right here of a list of lists. Say that 10 times, okay? So you can pull that up in JAWS. And by the way, this is the structure that it creates in the tag tree, right? Unlike HTML, which has a list tag, an L tag, and an LI tag, there's actually 3 tags in PDF. There's a list body, right? Tag that's also associated. Not to be confused with the content of the tag. Tag is just a container. The content is actually the text, right?
LI, is that list indented? Is that what the LI means?
No, that's the list. That's the nested. You know, in a list tag, that's the parent tag, right? You have the children tag or the LI tags, right? The children tag. Children nested inside of its parent, right? And you can have one. You can have 2 or more. Because typically, you don't want a 1 bullet list, right? Typically, you want to have more than 1. And so those are the children tag. And then you can have them nested inside of each other. We'll see it when we look at the tag tree. But let me go down here. And now notice we have 2 lists, right, that are converted from our PDF document. Now, by the way, JAWS will also read Adobe Acrobat Pro different than when it read than if you view it in Adobe Acrobat Reader, which is the free player, right? So typically most people are going to be reading it in the reader, which is going to read even better. Okay, well, let's see what it does here.
List of 5 items.
Now, see, what did it say? List of 5 items. That's useful to me. Whereas in Word, it just says bullet, 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 right? It told me it was a list of 5 items, which is useful. And another thing, again, that I may have not mentioned is that when JAWS go in and out of these structure, it's all about, remember the structure, go in and out of these structure element, it'll tell you when it's going in and when it's coming out of it, okay? And so let's listen to that.
Bullet dash M dash department, bullet DARS M dash, bullet DPSM, bullet DFPSM dash division for
I'm about to go to the last one, right?
Bullet DSHSM dash department.
Now, if I try to do it again, listen to what it says.
List end.
Listen, that's useful to me to let me know I've completed my list. I went through those 5 items. So not only to tell me when I was going in and how many elements that I had, but also when I got out of the list. Now, let's go to the second list, which is a list in a list, right?
List of 3 items.
Now, it told me a list of 3 items. Because even though there's 5 things there, there's 3 list items in this top level parent list. You guys see that? Right? There's DAS, there's DFPS, and there's DSHS, right? That's 3 items, not 5, but 3. But watch what happens as I navigate through that list.
Bullet dash M dash Department of Aging and Disability Services.
Okay, that's
list of
good.
2 items, nesting level 1.
What did it say? Nesting level 1. Let me know I'm in a nest, okay?
O DARS M dash Department of
Now it says, that's
Services.
that's the blank bullet. So the solid bullets, you know, because you can have blanks in your gun too, right? Besides solid real bullets, you can have blank bullets, right? Kind of use that analogy. It told me, that's that hollow bullet, if you will.
ODBSM dash
Oh,
division
again.
for blind
And what is it going to say
services.
next? Help me out, you guys. Okay.
List end nesting level 1.
Now it's going to go back to my top level list again.
Bullet DFPS.
And it's a bullet, not an O, right, but a bullet.
Bullet DSHSM dash Department of State and Health Services.
Now what is it going to say if I try again? End of the list.
List end. Heading level 2 steps
So
and create.
it's going to help a blind user to know when they're going in and out of a nested list. Life is easy. So list typically comes in clean within a PDF document if you do it right in the Word document. Now, if you don't do it right, you got to go to that touch-up reading panel and you got to manually add tags to your tree and select things and put them in each of those containers in this list panel. Let me just show you that list that got created. And then I would do it, but it would take some time. But it's a painful process to say the least.
Preview less L greater closed to move through level 2. Less L greater.
Well, you can see right here again. This is a list, if you can see that. And then there's 3 LI tags, right? Those are the list items or list element, list items, or line items. And then you have a L body. Unlike HTML, there's an additional tag, nested tag, called an L body, list body. That's the tag, okay? See the little tag right there? That's not the content. The content is in here as a bullet list. Now, by the way, just for your information, never delete the what we like to call the shoebox. And if you guys can see this little shoebox right here, y'all women would appreciate those little shoeboxes, right? Don't delete the shoebox because it's going to cause you all kind of headaches. If you need to delete something in PDF, you convert it to an artifact, right? You right-click on it and say change to artifact, and then you delete the tag. But never delete a shoebox. Okay, did I say that? Did I make myself clear? Okay, never put 5 asterisks by that because that will cause you all kind of headaches if you delete those content without converting them first. Okay, convert it to an artifact. Basically what that does is pushes it in the background as an artifact and it's not being seen by the screen reader. Now, if I look at my nested list, let's see if I can scroll down. By the way, this is the example I was telling you earlier. If you make a mistake and add some carriage return, it creates 3 separate lists out of one list. Not a good thing there. So see here, actually there's 4 lists. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's see here. What time do we have to?
Until 3:30.
Okay. Where's my list I created? Okay, here we go, right here. Now, if you want to select something in your document, because a lot of time you have a big document you want to, and you don't want to try to figure out where's that stupid thing. Can I say that? On a tag tree, right? You have one of those moments. What you can do is, again, going back to the golden rule, select what you want to affect, and then have Adobe Acrobat find it for you on the tag tree. Let me show you how to do that because this is a big time saver. So let's say I want to find where this stupid tag is. Can I say that? Right here. But I don't want to be trying to hunt and chase it down on this big list of tags, right? So what I can do is make sure I have my accessibility panel open in reading order.
Button to activate, press space.
If I select just select anything just to get to where I want to go, right? If I click on this little button right here, I don't know if you guys can see it, right? There's an option button.
Context menu to navigate, press up or down arrow
And see, and so make. Okay, let me silence off. Irritating.
Leaving menus, speakers left parent.
Okay, I tell people, first time I heard JAWS, and you can turn this thing up and ramp it up and it can go really fast. Belinda, remember Belinda Lane? She gave a presentation on JAWS about 10 years ago, and she had that thing ramped up really fast. I was like, yeah. I tell people all the time I wanted to commit suicide. JAWS can get really irritating until you get used to it, right? But again, you don't need to know JAWS, you just need to know what JAWS looks for, right? And in fact, that's what I did for the first 3 months of my job, right? I was supposed to learn JAWS, but I was employing a technique that I'm fond of called fake it till you can make it. And so I knew what JAWS was looking for, so until I could learn JAWS, I knew JAWS would look for those structural elements, the headings, the images, lists, alt tags, and the like. And so I kind of faked it till I could learn how to use JAWS. Anyway, I had that selected, so what I'm going to do is go here and select Find Tags from Selection. So this is the option panel right here. This is, if you hover over it, yeah, it says Options. Okay, select that Option tab or button, and then select the Find Tags from Selection, because I got a selection, so I want, hey, find me the tag from that selection. So when I click on it, it's going to take me right to that spot without much fuss, and now I'm not having to hunt and chase it down. And again, now if you got a 5-page or 2-page document, it's not a big deal. Even then, it's still a big time saver. But when you got a 300-page document, you don't want to be trying to navigate through 300,000 tags to find out where that stupid bullet list item is you're trying to fix, right? You want to get to it right. You want to cut to the chase, if you will, and go to it readily. So now in this list, notice again you have 3 lists at the top level. But if I click on this one, actually I think it was the second one. Where's that list? Oh, no, actually, no, I take that back. This one doesn't have the nested. So this is going to just have ordinary list items. If I click on this list, which is that, no, you want to keep them as the, because that's what JAWS looking for, is those particular proper tag names, right? Yeah, now again, I'm going to do one of my famous numbers. I'm going to select, and then I'm going to do Find Tag from Selection, so I can go to it readily. So now in this LI, keep jumping on me. Let's see, let's try that again. Okay, there we go. So that's that, so that's good. Okay, so now, I don't know if you guys can see this, but let me collapse these so you can see. So in this list item, there's 1, 2, 3, right? So you see 1, 2, 3, right? But if I click on this one and drill down, actually I think it's on the first one. Yeah, see there's a list in a list. Now, how many items do I have? How many list items do I have in that list? 2. So if I expand it, look at the 2 list item nested inside of that list. Now again, if you didn't do it right in Word, and sometimes when you convert things to PDF, it doesn't come in clean, you got to know how to create those tags. By the way, to create a tag, you right-click on a tag below where you want to insert it, and you do New Tag. And then you can select from that list. Then you got to insert this tag, you got to insert that tag, and then you got to select it and then convert it. And you got to go through all kind of stuff to get to it and hang it on a tree, if you will, the tag tree that is. But if you do it in Word, right? Now, InDesign, because somebody mentioned earlier about InDesign causes all kind of problems. So if you got an InDesign document, I think it was you talking to me earlier, it kind of causes all kind of headaches when you convert stuff. But Word typically comes in fairly clean.
InDesign to PDF?
Yeah, InDesign to PDF kind of causes all kind of, we have more problems with InDesign than anything else. Huh?
You can set it up correctly.
Yeah, if you set it up correctly in design, but I've heard there's been issues. We've had issues in the past with InDesign losing stuff or corrupting files, all kind of craziness. So InDesign is usually hard to convert. Word converts fairly good, you know, and PowerPoint, you know, converts fairly well. I've had bullet, you know, because you know PowerPoints typically have bullet lists in them, right? They convert fairly well into a PDF file without any problem. And tables converts fairly well. InDesign, we just have problems, just to let you know. Anyway, so that is a list. So let's go on and cover another item. That's the structure element. So it tells you it's a list. There's 5 items. When it's going in, when it's coming out of the list, right? Let's move on to another topic. And that would be images. So let's talk about 3 images. And as you guys, most of you guys I know, I'm sure, is that images have what? Alt text. It's alternative text. And this is akin to HTML for the HTML folks in the house. I think you're a web developer back there, right? This is akin to alt text that you put on in HTML. Actually, it's alt attribute. It's not a tag. In HTML, it's an attribute of a tag, right? To be correct. But the concept is the same. And then this is true also of PDF, HTML, PowerPoint. Most applications, you got to put alt text on your image. Now, I like to have fun with this one, and that's what I'm going to do. Do I have that one? Yeah, there we go, right there. Okay, so you know to put alt text on an image, right? Now, if I didn't do this, it would come in without the alt text, and I would have to do it inside of the PDF file. But if I do it in Word, it automatically gets transferred into my PDF file, to let you know. What you may not know to do is to do a couple things. Now, again, with lists, going to list it as a summary. Make sure you have a real list, right, which is kind of hard not to do, and make sure they nested correctly. So, again, those are 2 takeaways for lists. But let's go back to images. One thing you want to remember about an image, one, you have the alt text. We know that. But the alt text, alternative text that you have, you don't need to be too descriptive. And let me give you an analogy of that. Can somebody describe that image for me, if you will? As an alt text. Somebody want to take a stab at, describe that image up there for me to use in my Word document. Somebody want to help me out?
Stylized figure inside of concentric circles.
Stick figure in the circle.
Okay. 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 So this is the first thing you need to remember about text. About an image rather, is you never use the word image or picture when describing the alt text. The reason for that is, just like all other structure element that JAWS read or announces, it will announce it as an image. So for example, if you have an image of a cat, JAWS will announce image of a cat. Not good, right? So don't use the word image or picture because JAWS will announce that object as such, okay? So never use the word image or picture because JAWS will announce it as such. Oh, what is that? Oh, I'm running out. Okay, so if it doesn't matter, well, let me clarify myself. Okay, what you can do, however, is instead of using image or picture, right, you could be descriptive in the type of image that it is. It's a photo, it's an illustration, it's a drawing, it's a blueprint, it's a sketch. Because that might be helpful if I'm in an art gallery to know that what I'm seeing is it's not an actual picture of a cat, but it's a drawing of a cat or a drawing or painting, if you will. It's okay to use those adjectives to describe the type of image it is. You may want to say a photo, but don't use the word picture or image in your description. So you might want to say a photo. Typically, you don't need to say photo. I mean, that's a dead giveaway, we call it, right? But you might want to use as a painting, a drawing, an image. I mean, not image, but a sketch, a blueprint, right? And those are okay, because that kind of helps me to let me know what kind of image it is. Question?
Can we use like sample screenshots of email?
Yeah, screenshot is fine. I use it all the time. It's a screenshot or a dialogue box of blah, 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 right? You want only, now, so that's the first thing you want to, don't use, and then be as concise as possible. Now, what you don't want to do is this. You don't want to say that this is a blue circle, right? Inside of that blue circle, there's a thick circle, concentric circle for you geeks in the house, all right? And then inside of that circle, there's this white stick figure with his arm raised and his leg spread. You don't want to do that. Okay, you don't need to get that descriptive. All you need to do on that, for most of us, know this is a accessibility logo symbol, right? All I would put in there is accessibility logo. Okay, you don't have to get descriptive. So the key is, think about what you would want this thing to say if you was blind, right? And you don't have to write War and Peace inside of that alt text, right? Just keep it simple. We just say keep it simple, stupid, but that was not politically correct. So we say keep it simple, student, right? And so make it simple, just an accessibility logo, life is easy. Okay, now how do you do that? Well, you right click on it and you select Format Picture. Okay, yeah, because this is 2013. I'm used to seeing the dialog box show up, right? So you click on this icon right here, that's layout and property, and then under the alt text, you want to put it in the description field, not, emphasis there, not the title field. Okay, you want to make sure you put your alt text in the description field and not the title field.
Why is that? I thought it didn't read the title.
Title is almost like the title tag in HTML. You can use it for HTML, but for PDF, you want to put it in the description field. Okay, because that's what George is going to read it. Read it from. Now, if I have an image like this, all I need to say is this is a keyboard key with a wheelchair logo, right? Accessibility logo, something to that effect. Keep it simple. I don't need to say it's blue because as a blind user, I don't care what color it is. I can't see blue, right? So just be as concise as possible when you're describing an image. I got 2 minutes. Is it too close in 2 minutes? Oh, man, I wish I got a trial version of JAWS, so it's about to run out on me. So that's what you do with an image. So let's rehearse what we need to do with images. One, you want to use alt text. You guys knew to do that already. You want to avoid the use of the word what? Image or picture, because it will announce it as such. And you want to keep it as concise as possible. So remember those three. Again, I try to keep it under 3, right? Takeaways. So that's what you do with images. And again, this is true not only in Word, but in PDF, in HTML, InDesign, PowerPoint, you name it. These are what I call transferable skills. When I teach transferable skills, right?
Yeah. I was thinking, as far as the images, sometimes it's just eye candy.
Let me talk about that. That's a good comment. If it is a did a decorative image, right? Like a nice little border, all right, in between your page, right? You don't want to say anything, right? Because that you don't need to say this is a border, right? So if it's a decorative image, you don't need to say anything. Now in HTML, we use a blank alt text, right, to suppress that from a screen reader. So if it's a decorative image, don't use anything at all.
But in Word, I read somewhere that Word doesn't have a way of.
Yeah, it's a little bit. I typically say don't worry about doing anything. Where now PDF,
Making an artifact.
I guess that's Jaws kind of playing around with me.
Could you just make it an
Yeah,
artifact then?
you can make it an artifact. In fact, the new version of PDF will, if you forget to include it, it's going to prompt you to do you want to make this what they call a decorative image, and that's what you're doing. You're basically making an artifact. You guys know how to do artifact, right? You right click on it and make an artifact. In fact, let's take this document. Let me just see if this one has. Hope Jaws didn't lock me up. I guess it closed down because I don't see them on the menu there. Okay, so let's see if we can. I'm locked up again. That's why I always like to wait before I install new software. I want to. Jaws locked me up again. So I'm going to do a Control-Alt-Delete. Okay, so let's see if we can get back in there. Okay. So I'm going to convert this to a PDF document. I believe one of these do not have an alt text associated with it. And I'm going to click Save. And again, it should convert it and open it up in Acrobat. Good. And then preview it. And I'm going to increase the size so you guys see it better. Now, if I look at my tag tree rather, and look for an image, well, a figure is what it's called, right, in PDF. So if I didn't add the alt text in Word, what I would have to do in the PDF, again, that comprehensive mitigation prevents excessive remediation. If you had done it right, you wouldn't have to do this, but if I didn't do it, let's see, if I click on a property, right click, notice I added some text that came in from Word, right? Now, I believe the second one in my list, right here, I didn't add text in Word, right? So let's see if we can, yeah, I did. And so what I would do is literally type it in, right click on it, and do accessibility logo, right? And click close. And then Jaws would announce that to the user because the blind person can't see images, right? Duh, right? So it has to announce what's in that image to a blind user. And likewise, I would have to select this one, right-click on it, select properties, again, add alt text.
So does Adobe identify what images do not have the alt text?
Okay, so yeah, it does. In fact, if I was to run the accessibility checker, now there's two versions of accessibility checker in DC and above. Most of you may be familiar with this one right here. When you click on the accessibility button, and then you do a full check, right? That's old school, right? The new way, and the way I like to do it, because there's other things you need to do to a document. For example, you got to set the page properties and the title and all that fun stuff. The new way of doing it is to use the the wizard, if you will, in order to make your document accessible. That's what I use. Let me show you how that works. And let me see if I have it up here. We don't, so. But did you see it? Maybe I overlooked it. Let me see. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. I overlooked that. Thank you. Okay. So you click on that, and then you say Make Accessible, right? You guys see that? Click on it. And then you click on the Start button. Now, what's nice about this is it walks you through each step of the process from start to finish on making your document accessible. So you don't forget to add your title, if you've got an alt text, it's going to prompt you, and you can deselect it to make it a decorative image. So let's look at that. So I want to make a title. So, and again, I'm just putting some bogus stuff in there. I add a title. Click OK. It's going to prompt me again for my language, because it's always good to set the language type, right? If you're doing a Spanish document, you want to put Spanish, right, or whatever. You want to click OK. That's good. It's going to tell me, now I don't have a form, but if I did, it would tell me, do you want to do that? This is a document, not a form, so I'm going to say no, skip that step. It's going to tell me the reading language, so I'm going to click English again, click OK. So it just prompts me. Then when I click OK this time, I get that old dialog box that most of you are probably familiar with. Actually, before that, I get this alt text dialog box. This is nice because it prompts me if I forgot to include alt text on an image. What's even more nice, it's nicer rather, is that if it's a decorative image that I don't need nobody to hear it, because a lot of you guys try to be cute, put cute little stuff up there, and that doesn't need to be there for nobody, right? You can make it a decorative image. You click on this little checkbox right there, bam. That's going to make it an artifact for you automatically. So even if you did skip a step of not adding alt text, it's going to prompt you. In fact, if you did 20 of them, let's say you had 20 images, it's going to walk you through that thing 20 times, and you can rock and roll, technical term, through all of those images and add alt text or suppress it as decorative image, a figure, if you will. And when you hit save, then it's going to prompt you for that old dialog box that you're intimately familiar with. Click the Start button. Now, I didn't remediate all this document, so I probably will be getting some errors. And it told me I got an error right here, for some reason. But you're going to get two errors. You guys are probably familiar with these two. And these are not JAWS, but Adobe Acrobat can't do anything with these. You have to do these manually, right? One is the logical reading order. You just need to make sure that the document is reading correctly. And I typically know if it's going straight down a page, top to bottom, left to right, life is easy. I'm going to right-click on that and do pass. A little check there. And then the color contrast, right? Now, typically, again, a little chauvinism here, black and white is always right. Typically, in most documents, you have white background, right, with black text on it, right? You're not going to go wrong with black and white. Now, when you get some more other colors, you may want to check to see if the color contrast is good. And you use a color contrast analyzer. There's a free one that we use that's available for IE or standalone. And you check the color and contrast ratio to make sure it's within acceptable limits based upon your agency. Okay, so let me...
Maybe tables and fillable forms. Can you touch on that?
Let me talk about tables. Form is a big is another 2-3 hours.
So I guess come on back.
Yeah, we could do that. Okay, question.
Yeah, so I noticed that on one of your images you had arrows pointing to what the next step would be in that other Word document that you have.
Yeah,
It was an image and it had arrows.
yeah, I was just showing that the tag tree broke that bullet list into individual lists, and I had it.
Well, a blind person see that.
Oh,
It's a picture.
you would have to describe that to them. Yeah, anything that's on a picture, you would have to describe it to the person. Okay, so let's do a table, if you will. Let's do tables really quick. Let me call it quits. So let's get out of this.
And also you said there was three things, and you did real headings listed correctly, and then there were
Say that again?
You told us there was 3 things to do. There's real headings,
Right.
nested correctly. You said there was 3.
Headings are basically have real headings nested to. I think nested. There's only I think we made 2 for headings of late. Nested correct, and then make sure that's nested correctly for headings.
At the beginning, you said 5, headings, lists, images, tables, and I never did catch what you said.
So headings, we did headings, we did lists, did images, we about to do tables, right? And then they got color and contrast. And you could do lists and links in there too, which I didn't cover. I did cover links briefly. Don't use click here. Okay, that's the main thing for links.
One question. One thing, a lot of documents that come across my table, they've got flow charts or organizational charts. Do you recommend they type out
Do a text description version of alt chart. You can't make the alt chart that accessible. Do a text version. We have to do it all the time. Okay, let's do a table really quick because we're getting this 2-pound bologna in a 1-pound bag, and we're squeezing it tight. Okay, so this is a table. Now, with tables should be designed for what we call tabular data. Tables shouldn't be used for layout, right? To lay things out to make them look pretty on a page. You shouldn't be doing that. That's old school. We used to do that with HTML, right? Now we do it with CSS, or cascading style sheets. Okay, table. Basically, let me give you the classical example that I give. If I were to say $1.62 per pound, that wouldn't mean anything to you, right? If I just say that, or you heard me saying, you heard George saying $1.62 per pound wouldn't mean anything to you, right? But if I was to say $1.62 per pound from Randall's, right, that would mean a little bit more, but it's still not useful information, right? Because I don't know what $1.62 per pound from Randall is, right? What if I was to say $1.62 per pound from Randall's and bananas, or bananas at $1.62 per pound from Randall's? That gives me a complete picture of what's in that cell in that table. You guys tracking? Right? And so table provides useful information only if you have the proper heading rows and heading columns in the table. Now, so when you're looking down from what we call header rows, they look down into the document to give information about, they're not the data, they just describe the data. They're like adjectives, right? And then when I have those rows, would you see where we got pears, peaches, and what is that? Bananas. They look in the other way into the document to give me more information about what's in a given cell. So you see, they kind of connect the dots. $1.62 per pound from Randall's of bananas. You could read that however you want, right? But it's going to connect the dots. So what's important to tables is that you have the proper header row and header columns. Now, something else about tables. Notice I purposely split this table across 2 pages. Purposely. That was done by design. Well, what happens if you print out the second page and you didn't have the first page? You wouldn't know what that information referred to. So we got to fix that problem. Second thing you want to do with tables is have alternating row colors. That helps for everybody, particularly if it's long tables, right? Have alternating row colors. But let's resolve this problem here with the splitting across pages and having the proper heading across the page, because that's going to translate good into that PDF file when we go there. Otherwise, you're going to have to fix it if we don't. So if I select this top row, just the top row, I'm going to right-click and select Table Properties. And I'm going to go to this Row tab, and I'm going to select what we call Repeat as Header Row at the top of each page. Watch what happens when I click this button. Bam. You see it showed up on the second page. Now if I was to print that page out and lost page 1, I still got useful information about what's in that table, right? Now, you should always, emphasis there, always do that. Even if the table is not split originally or initially in the middle of the page. And why is that? Because later on you might add content, and how often do we add content to a document and push it between 2 pages? Or you might subtract content. If it's on the second page and I delete stuff, it might push it in between 2 pages, right? And so you're going to always want to do this even though the page doesn't initially, keyword there, split across 2 pages, because it may in time split. So you want to do that, but more importantly, you want to select that again. Repeat across as header row. When you convert this, now it's going to come in as a T tag, header, table header tag in PDF.
What did you do first before you went to that page?
I selected this top row, right? Now right click or control click on the Mac for you Mac folks in the house. And then I selected table properties. Okay, and it's going to pull up the table property dialog box and allow you to, and you go to the row tab and select the repeat as header row. And by the way, deselect the other one. Now, I'm going to convert this real quickly into a PDF.
Can you do that for more than one header row?
You typically, not in Word, in PDF, and that's another topic in itself, which we didn't even cover, what I call complex tables, complex lists, because it would be really good to know how to do those things, and maybe you can invite me back, maybe, sure. To do some complex stuff. And forms, which is totally different. That's another class that I teach for 3 hours, okay, just doing forms. But let me convert this to a PDF and see what happens real quickly. I know we're running out of time, and I'm talking fast. Okay, so I'm going to save that and save it again, convert it. And let's look at my tag tree, and I'm going to look for that table right here, I think. And notice it created TR tags. TR tags are what? You guys know in HTML, just like HTML, that's the table row, right? But inside of the table row, you have TD. TD is what? Table data. But these should be what? Table header, because these are the header row. They're not data, they're header. They provide information about data or data, depending upon what part of the country you're from, of in a given cell on that table. So what I need to do is I could go one by one, not much fun, and select these and convert them to TH tags, right? I could do that, Control D. Or what I could do is go to my accessibility panel, reading order, and then I got to select at least one of these cells in this table, right here. I'm going to select one of them, and I'm going to go to what we call a table editor. It edits the table, right? And I get this table editor, and I right click on it. It looks like it's already formatted correctly. Let me see. So I guess it is correct. I was looking at the wrong one, right? Well, let me see. Cancel, because they look like it's already formatted. Yeah, they already formatted because I did it in Word. I forgot I did it in Word. But had I not done it in Word, these would be TD tags. I would have used that table editor that you just saw to fix it. So I would have to go in here and do table cell properties, select header cell, not data, but header, and it will convert them from TD to TH. You can do it manually. Again, you got one table. I wouldn't even go through this dialog box at all. I would just change them all right there in the tag tree. Life is easy, right? But when you got a boatload of tables on a page, and sometimes we do, right, this is going to save you a lot of time. Now, again, there's some complex tables where you got to do what they call scope, and you got to look in, you got to look down and look over to information about multiple header rows and columns. Then that's another subject in itself. So let me show you that, and we'll call it a quits. I'm going to show you an example of that. Now, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to just show you an example.
Can you also set up that first column as a header?
Yeah, you can. So this is an example of a complex table. And in my class, let me open it up so you can see it better. So now when you have merge, you guys know what the merge is, right? Merge rows or columns in your table, then it becomes complex, right? Or you have multiple header rows and columns, then that's a little bit more involved as far as using the scope to create you want to say organic peaches, $5 each at farmers market. So you got to go a little bit more deep into the table and set up scoping, if you will. And you do that in HTML, right? You scope your header rows and columns to make them more accessible. Whew. Okay, am I out of time? Okay, so that's basically a complex table. Maybe we might have another discussion on that for another day. And then also, I have a, let's see, multiple list, and we could talk more about that. And because a lot of times list doesn't come in right in your document, you got to remediate it. But this takes time to do, and that may take me 15 minutes to remediate this, right? And we just don't have time to do that. And then forms, again, is a totally different topic. So we may have 2 more sessions after this one. I got a few more minutes. Any questions?
Do we need JAWS to do this?
No, you don't. You just need to know what JAWS look for, remember?
Okay.
It's good to have JAWS, and it's good to learn at least the basics.
So, if I'm looking in accessibility layers, do I need it?
You probably would. It would be good for you to have it. Now,
But also, both Acrobat Reader and Pro have a read aloud feature built in. It's not JAWS, but if you want to get an idea, that might.
yeah, and that's a good point.
And then there's also NVDA.
It is NVDA and Windows Eyes, because some people can't afford JAWS, right?
Yeah.
Now, you can download a JAWS, and as you saw, you can run it in what they call a 40-minute mode, right? You have 40 minutes to do your work, okay, before it closes out on you and crash your system.
Well, just read text boxes.
No, text boxes are not accessible, right? And those clip art, or what do they call it, word art, right? You know, because y'all want to be fancy, you know, budding designers. You put a little birthday party, you know, come to my birthday party, you can put a little art. Y'all think it's fancy, right? Those word art, they are not accessible, right? Now, what you can do, again, employ the technique, fake it till you make it. You take a screenshot of that because you got an edict from your manager. I got to have that nice little arch happy birthday symbol, right? What you can do is take a screenshot, use Snagit, Snippet, or any other screen capturing program, and take a picture of it, and then use that picture and just put happy birthday on the picture as the alt text, right? But word art is not currently, maybe later, accessible with Word or any other programs, PowerPoint, Excel, and the like. Any other questions? All right. I hope you guys learned something. I always teach myself happy.